onboard a whole new collective or new members through a new channel, how do they get familiar with what we're doing, right, in their environment? So that to me is part of this, part and parcel of that, and it's fairly important to me because I'm getting now new requests coming in from all sides to say, hey, can we join you? We like your platform. We need a space. I see conversations in other places like the GCC. They're looking for Slack as the solution for this, which obviously doesn't really work, or struggle to find other places where they can invite their members and have these conversations. So contrasting that to what we're doing here with Mattermost as our main chat channel, the new meeting thing, the big blue button that Robert found. Oh, Robert, how's that going, by the way?
Actually, I was writing a little agenda of my own, but they have a Google group where you can contact, I guess, the people, and I asked about the HTML5 client, and they said that you're only able to see new features on their site because they have like some special version that's not released yet, but they said it's basically very soon to be released, and then it will have all those sort of features that we're missing.
Great.
Yeah.
Good news, good news. So what this is, for those of you who haven't heard about this, so we're using Zoom right now, right? But we've been looking for alternatives, open source alternatives to the Zoom platform, because we only have a single host license and you can't run them in parallel. So that doesn't scale, so we can't do it. Hence, we've been looking at other solutions, and Robert came up with this cool vendor called Big Blue Button, who actually have open sourced their code, and we have installed it on our server, which is now running. You can see that in Mattermost, actually, if you go into any of the channels here, this is new Big Blue Button here, named appropriately on top, and then you can actually, in this case, I'm in Philip's channel, but if I go to one of the public channels here, here's go to announcements, then I can create a new Big Blue Button meeting. That's a tongue breaker. And you can do that within Mattermost, and you can launch it ad hoc right away. And the quality is pretty amazing. I think it's at par, if not better than the Zoom quality we have. And it's free, right? So the only cost we have, obviously, is to run these video conferencing calls on our server. Robert was kind enough to provide some server space to try this out here. But eventually we want to use it on our own DigLive server, so we have to open up a new droplet on DigitalOcean, and provide some resources there. So that requirement is a bit higher than the usual thing we have running with Mattermost. I think the minimum configuration will cost us around $40 a month, and we should be able to run a lot of concurrent sessions than video sessions on that server. So, I mean, that's all worth it to me. So going back to the platform thingy here, it's an important piece, what I call a conversation element to onboard new members. So, assuming they're coming and they want to use some of the tool sets, what are the basic tool sets we want to provide? And to me, that's Mattermost. That's most likely the Big Blue Button thing. That's the notes thing, and maybe some wiki, federated wiki. I don't know yet. I'm currently working with the CodiMD thing, which is the derivative of the HackMD, which is a pretty good note-taking tool. So that's another important sort of conversational element. And the fourth one here is bots, and that is still a placeholder. I don't know what fills in here. I found another good open source tool that we could install on our server and use that as a bot tech that we can maintain and add some rules and all this good stuff to it, but not sure yet. But I know I think it's sort of another important element of this green block here, right? And with this, I think we have a good service offering, like standard out of the box, very basic service offering. that we can give to collectives who want to join us. But as I said, that's only one part of the equation. The other one is the member management piece. So it's the CiviCRM stuff that Roy and Graham are working on. Get this up and running because we do collect emails, and we want to have a secure environment for those, and we want to use those for reaching out to the members, in internal newsletters. So that's to be determined. We're still working on it, obviously, with the WordPress problem. But assuming we get that up and running, then we need to have a process in place to say, hey, these new collectives come here, pay membership fees that the collective themselves collect, right? But a certain, percentage, we need that for keeping our infrastructure up and running, right? And we talked about that the other day. That could be as low as, I don't know, $5 a year, $5 a decade, whatever is required to get the server for $40 a month and other server droplets up and running. But we do need that, and I want to stop here, not talking too much, stop here because we still have work to do here, right? And I don't think we're in a position to start onboarding a lot of collectives now, right? Hundreds of people. We're not ready to do that. But we should be able to do that within, I think, a relatively short period of time. And then begin to offer these other services, right? So to me, another big one is the financial elements piece. So that's member management. The CiviCRM stuff would fall under that. But then also, we need some kind of an accounting function / feature here, right? / app. Then thinking about, embedding some community currencies here, capturing the transactions and interactions through the social ledger stuff I'm doing. So that's an important piece here. And there are other elements, right? So there's organization stuff that's ongoing, the stuff I'm doing with mapping, Christina's doing with mapping and the holonic charts, the skill map I'm putting together, to map out who's in, who's out, what skills you have, how they relate. And the call it the social psychological elements here, which is really the protocols, the principles, the way we coordinate and flow things and make decisions going forward. So I'll stop here. I want to have this more as an open discussion, really, to see what do you think about moving this forward so we can begin to get more members on board and continue what Robert has started now with the learning initiative there, right? And maybe that's a good point, Robert, to speak about that a little bit if you want to, how that is going, to bring members into your space there and to have a good conversation using some of the resources we provide and you provide.
Yeah, I've sort of been taking it slow because some of the, I don't know, I kind of wanted it to be a nice environment to invite people into and not just kind of invite a whole bunch of people and then have people waiting around asking like, okay, what am I doing here or something like that. I've been thinking, and actually for my own learning, I guess in sort of a meta way was the whole point of the group. I've been learning a bunch about how to put servers up for apps that I want to test out and try. So I've been doing that. And one that I did recently is a discourse server. Because I think, and I'm pretty sure the collective already has one, or I'm not sure if it's heavily used or not, but I wanted it to be paired with the Mattermost space for the Open Learning Collective. Because I think Mattermost, in my opinion, is better for sort of like real-time direct message and like meet up in a room, and maybe it would be useful for like curation for some of these groups. But I think it would also, in the open sense of the Open Learning Commons, to have sort of something that people could stumble on through Google if they're searching something that the collective, that the OLC commoners or whatever you want to call the participants there, the things they're talking about. So that was something I've been doing recently. I forget your initial prompt though about, and I guess Michael had questions about creating channels and that sort of thing. my leaning is just sort of like that it's for now be somewhat emergent. So like if there's a topic of interest that you're really interested in learning about, or that you have a bunch of resources, you just want to share it and talk about it with other people, that sort of at this point feel free to create a channel. And yeah, I'm slowly but surely sort of like creating little how-to docs and useful things to be able to sort of contextualize it for people. I guess for other contexts, I had a call with sort of a one-on-one call with John Keldon the other day, because I sort of messaged him to say, Christina keeps telling me that at any point, supposedly 5,000 people could just show up at this space, and I kind of want to talk to you about, like, I don't know, do you want one channel or thousands of channels, or I don't know. So we had a nice talk about sort of that sort of thing, and the resolution came to basically like start small with a small group around sort of pattern language decks, and just have like a little experiment within the like metacogs cohort. So, which in my mind is something that's intends to be sort of a collaborative Zoom session type co-learning sessions. So, and I think John has some ideas there about how to play with, I think he calls it is generative sequence pattern language deck, or maybe it was inquiry. I don't know. I forget, but I'm still new to a lot of his stuff. I don't know. I'm talking too much.
No, it's great. Thanks, Robert. And there's a lot of activity. I agree. And he's about to launch into something new here. We don't know. Nobody knows exactly what this is going to be, which is a good thing. The liminal space we find ourselves in. But you're right. So they might come, and there may be a lot of people, and we need to be able to handle that in a certain way. Yeah. Sorry. What, Jim? No.
Too many.
I think it was Michael.
Michael.
Yeah, I was just saying that last Thursday I did a webinar for a group called Reconomy Practitioners. There are 12 or so. There's a link in the collective chat to the video of it. And the last 20 minutes was the discussion on how to migrate that conversation into a useful place. And I was advocating the OLC Mattermost as a place to play with it. This is a much smaller group than John's, and it would, I think, be a great place to start just playing through some of the simple onboarding and how to get people engaged. Run through it with a small group. John's group is vast, massive, and totally unwieldy. I see no probability of 5,000 people showing up in a short term. But he could produce 50 or so. That might happen. My network with the economy people is more likely to produce 10, 12, 15 people, and gradually. So it would be perhaps an easier place to run through the process and see what happens. I'm very keen on using the Zettelkasten process. Insofar as those are cards, those are going to be basically cards, aren't they, Joachim? That I can associate a topic with a card with a Zettelkasten and use that in the sort of social ledger tracking.
Yes, that's right. That's right, Michael.
Good. That's all I have to talk about, really. That's what I said.
Cool. That's helpful. Thanks, Mark.
I think David has his hand up.
David, yep.
Yeah. Would you mind putting up that image that you had, Joachim, of all the overview, the outline, the roadmap, the squares, the lovely colored squares?
Okay, this one? Yeah.
So my thought on that, my question as well to people is, if I look at all the areas of software, it's obviously huge. It's like covering kind of all known software in this planet and future alien civilizations kind of huge, right? So if I was like Shell, a big oil company, and I was looking at this map and I said, right, we need all this software to run our offices all around the world, right? And I've got $100 million budget, right? I wouldn't implement it all in open source, especially nowadays. I'd look at interfacing with other companies with good APIs that are dedicating on doing particular services very well. And I would refine what we do, Shell, as the unique element and concentrate on doing that really, really well. And kind of, I don't know if you call it outsource it, but integrate these other services, right? And that's the way of dealing with the huge complexity of, needing a financial and accounting system, a chat, a wiki, a bot, a blogging, a video conferencing, all this stuff, right? So given DigiLife's cooperative, open, ethical tool philosophy, right? How do you square the circle? How do you both keep the aims and the aspirations of promoting, developing, and utilizing open tools with the kind of pragmatics and reality of it's such a huge software task. We could spend forever trying to do this, and we don't have the budget to kind of bring all this stuff into one box type thing.
Yes.
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Now, from my point of view, there is a methodology for doing that, where you work with, kind of good small companies with APIs for non-essential core things, knowing that at any time you can switch to bring it kind of in-house and open source. You're not locked in there, and you have a very careful strategy where you only develop a few things yourselves, and as far as possible you integrate with APIs, small services into your offering, and that way you can sort of sail this ramp of continually bringing more and more services into the commons without requiring hundreds of millions of dollars of development budget, or letting down your users as you onboard them.
Yes.
So there's a way of doing it. And it seems to me, from looking at what we have as infrastructure and what have you, that's absolutely not what we're doing. What we're doing is basically doing the entire map, choosing good open source packages, doing it stage by stage by stage, and putting it on a server that we host in as pragmatic a way as we can. And I'm questioning that kind of, what would you call it, open business strategy?
So yeah, let me see if I can answer you there. It's a longer answer, and I'm sure I can only give snapshots of that here, because I don't think you have seen that before here. But let me highlight a few things. Maybe it makes more sense then. So first of all, this is a meta platform. We're not reinventing the wheel, first of all. So we're not in the software business where we build sort of a new platform. Okay, this is not about building a new platform. This is looking at existing open source tools, as you mentioned, that fit into sort of this map. Fit into what tool sets we want to provide to our members and to other collectives to get them going, right? To have them, provide a good environment for them to support them. And I mean, the easiest to see that, maybe I'll give you a couple of highlights here. So let's say the Nodes piece here. So Nodes is based on CodeMD, which is open source software. We don't write this, right? We're using their software. hopefully in the future also working together with them on improvements on the software. And the way we would use it is, we have this portal thing currently up and running, and that's also to Michael's point here. So these nodes can be shown here as an interface. So as you mentioned, API to me is a very important component. So
CodeEMD doesn't have an API yet, and you have to host it yourself. I know the project is the best one out there for doing that sort of thing.
Oh, you're good. So let me show you how I interface with that. See this button here? What they have is they have an API call to pull out all of the nodes that are currently in the system with some metadata points. So I'm doing a manual copy paste and then update this interface here. That's my API right now for CodeEMD. But if I look at, of course, things like Mattermost, all of these integrations here, that's accessing directly the Mattermost API. So I'm pulling out the different channels here. I'm pulling out the members, right? I'm pulling out who's involved. So that's direct API connection.
Jochen, not to interrupt, but I fully understand what you're doing. And I understand, I know all these code bases. I know the task at hand, but it's not. It is a philosophically different business strategy, and still the integration of, what is it going to be? It's going to be like maybe 8 to 15 different open source code bases. I've known many projects do that sort of. It's just, the basic point that I made is that you have a choice, and at the moment the choice is we choose the best open source code bases and we integrate them into as much of a well-designed, integrated, like you say, meta integration as possible, doing as little coding as possible and as much integration as possible. Okay, that's the current strategy. Yeah?
I think that is our strategy. I mean, this is a browser-based app that accesses other tools in a configurable manner that can be our own or can be somebody else's. Isn't that what we're doing, Yoki?
Yeah. So that goes a little bit into a deeper discussion around this card-based interface can be. We want to decentralize that as much as possible. So it's not only hosted on our server, right? They're using the same interface and they can tap into their own sources, right? So they have their own stuff up and running, but we use a common interface to say, hey, this is the stuff you're sharing, this is the stuff we're working on. So it goes across, right? That's an important strategy piece. That's not visible because right now this is only Dig Live, and the next step is what we're currently working on is collectives we bring into Dig Live into the same server, and then beyond that we'll run this on multiple servers, right? And then provide a common interface across that, right? But I want to go back to what you said, David, because I'm still not understanding fully what do you mean by there's a piece missing or this strategy does not seem to work in your eyes. Can you elaborate on that a bit?
Okay, I tried to say it very simply. I looking at the size of the task of integrating all these domains in a cohesive whole, my basic point is, I think it's huge. I just think it's really huge. So you have, I've been wrestling with the scale and of doing this sort of integration and thinking about how to do it for a long time. So like the way that I would think of doing it is like, oh, you take something like a bot, or you take something like a chat or something like that, something at least that you don't consider to be really core to the uniqueness of, let's say, the cooperative working practice, right? And you then say, okay, I'm not going to take that one on as an open integration and hosting it and maintaining it and Dockerizing it and then plugging it in and coding it, right? So I will choose to use I don't know, instead of Kodi.md or the HackMD, the open source HackMD thing, you say, well, maybe the Kodi guys, I'll see if they'll host it, or I'll use Dropbox for now because I know I can Dropbox Paper because I know I can switch from Dropbox Paper to Kodi when I want because they're both Markdown, and Dropbox has got an API at the moment and Kodi doesn't. Rather than putting a lot of effort into that, let's do the mapping, or let's do the community currency, the thing that no one else is really doing yet very well, and let's get that bit done. And when that bit's rolling, we can switch from this sort of API-based commercial hosting, outsourced hosting, and bring that in as and when we need. And it's a different strategy rather than saying, let's do it all now, purely open source on our servers, and do all the integration ourselves.
Well, I mean, we're doing part of this now because, take something like Google Docs. We can't replace that right now. It's there, and people use it. That's fine, What we're trying to do here is pick up some of the pieces that we're already beginning to own and put in our own box. The idea here is, David, and that's a very important piece to me, is we control that stuff here, okay? There's nothing outside, if you take Dropbox, you're not knowing what happens with the Dropbox data, right? You're not knowing you'd have no control over where they're going next, Tomorrow they can begin to charge fees, for using their stuff, right? We're independent from that because this is, to me, a much more stable environment we're creating here with picking certain open source, applications that we put in our box and we have it up and running on our environment.
Well, I agree, but I don't agree. So what I would say is that, for instance, and if you like, what would you call it? An API first strategy would say you can choose something like Dropbox Paper as long as to code it would be maximum 1 or 2 days, the integration. And whenever you want your data back, within 1 day, you can get it all back and switch to, let's say, Kodi, an open source solution. Right? So as long as because they'll always give you like 2-3 months notification of switching off their API or something like that. And as long as it's a very small amount of work to do that switch and you're not getting invited, then that's a rational strategy. Otherwise, never touch it. Right? Yeah, so for instance, I had the choice myself of getting up CodiMD because I really liked it. So I used it for a couple of months, and I was thinking of using Etherpad before that and all of that, getting it up on my servers and what have you, and integrating it with the tools and the software I did. But I looked at it and I decided, no, I won't do that. I'll use Dropbox Paper for now. And it's just an example. I'm not saying do Dropbox Paper, because the API was good and it only took me about 4 hours to code it. And I can get access to the Markdown from all my documents through the API super quickly and put it on, whatever service that I want. And I made sure that I could do that. And I said, okay, and the sign-on experience and everything is really good for people, and I can integrate it really nicely. And I'm thinking, oh, I'll wait until the Kodi guys, because it's a very new project, have got a robust API before I start putting time and effort into that.
Right. So to me, I mean, this is very similar though, because I can see CodiMD may not work out for us in the future, or maybe no longer support it. Then we rip it out, then we replace it with something else. That's absolutely doable. It's painful because a lot of people will have put some effort in there, and there's a migration path to getting the data out of this stuff into a new tool, right? But as you said, this is very modular, okay? If we don't like something, then we replace it. Just like this piece here, meetings, right? So we've been using Zoom calls from the beginning, right? Now we discovered this new tool, Robert discovered that, we're replacing it. This is it. And there is some API work to do, but that's actually a benefit here, because it's going to allow us access to their data store, and then that's hosted on our server again, okay? And then make that useful on the UI, okay? So help people to schedule meetings, help people to see who participated in a meeting, connect that to something like CodiMD to say, here's some meeting notes stored right in here that pertains to this kind of meeting here. So this is all very, very modular, David, the way I see that, right? And to talk about APIs, yes, I mean, there are APIs all over the place, right? APIs, I'm pulling in some data from, some semantic service that tells me about words in. Yeah, let me show you this. If you go to the members thing here, and you go to your profile here, right? So I'm putting in some information from an API that gives me information about the appearance or how important words are, compared to other words. So the example here in red, these are words that are very common and maybe you should not use them in your profile. So there's just an API I'm using here to pull that in. If that API no longer works, then get rid of it, right?
Which API is that, by the way?
Do I have it up and running here? I have to go find it. I can tell you later. I'll send you a link to that. Right, it's a very good one.
And
That's
also,
very reliable.
like at the moment, when we develop all this software and all the thinking that you've got there, okay, do we have like a way that people share their research and document it in a kind of more wiki-like way rather than just stream of chat where it gets lost at the top there? So, for instance, the APIs that are being used, or like I did a bunch of research on text mining, context mapping, AI, open APIs, charged APIs for concept type mapping stuff, and that's in my head, if you like. And Joachim, you've used an API for that service and what have you. Is there any place at the moment, or we've just got the chat to share that stuff?
Yeah, that's a great question, David. And the way I see that, chat to me is sort of the stream environment where things float by, right? You can't really collect knowledge there. What we use for that is put that into nodes, right? So what we've developed is a type of node that's called a protocol. And if you go to the portal, you'll see there are lots of protocols there for all kinds of things. Our developer protocol, recently we have an empathy protocol, how to behave and how to react to others in a collective like ours. And you're free to come up with any other protocol here, right? And put it out there and then just point people to that, right? So you basically take it out of the chat, out of the flow, and then it becomes more of a stable document, right? That we're building, but that we're co-creating. And that's important to me too in this whole strategy. I don't want to give you another super performance improvement tool that's good for you, for the individual. Anything that's in that portfolio of services it has to be with a notion of not to co-creating stuff together, right? So if it's notes, as you know, with CauDMD, this is actually, you can do concurrent editing in there. You can share the notes. You can do exactly, tell who can access the node, and you can build that piece of content together, right, with other people. And those people and those nodes to me are sort of the slower flowing pieces. I call them social objects in the context of the social ledger, where people gather around, certain objects that are there for longer term, right, for longer term stability and improvement of discussions around what we're doing here. And there are others. Too.
So I've got a lot of notes that I could share or I could add to some sort of document. I would say probably of the order of 2,000, yeah? Just written over the last 6 years or what have you. They're largely technical research as small federated wiki pages, So it might be JavaScript libraries for mind mapping, or it might be APIs for whatever, or it might be WebAssembly, what's the future of it, or it might be whatever it is, something like that, how would in the environment that we're imagining or that we have right now, how would I share them with the 20 other people so that you can find them easily and I can find your, because we'll end up with several hundred of these at least, right? And I would suspect within, let's say, within 6 months, there would be a few thousand of them, of notes, if we've got just 20 people sharing a little bit of what they know. So how how can we do the collective intelligence thing in that context? I mean, I guess the way is you attach these little notes. If it's Slack style, you attach you attach the notes to different channels. You give them a certain social protocol, and when you want to find one, you just message the different channels, say, hey, is there a note around like this, right? You can also search for all the attached files, and can't remember, you can in Slack if it's a certain type, and I assume you can with Mattermost, but I'm not sure, do free text search of the attached files or not? Do you know what the search is?
Yeah, that's one of the shortcomings with CodeMD right now. There's no full text search. So you can't search the content. You can search metadata, which gives you a filtering capability, right? And this is, I think, what we need right now is quickly filter out, hey, these are out of your 5,000 nodes, these are your nodes. These are nodes pertaining to this and this topic, right? Or this category that you put on the node. And then you can quickly drill down and find the right node that you're looking for, right? But that's a great example, right? Where I see, okay, you have a bunch of nodes. The interfaces are open enough so we can just pull them into our environment, right? And if you decide to do so, make them available to members, to people in the collective and other collectives, and then they can use these nodes, and that's important to me, use them in the context of what they're working on, right? They pull it into their project, they pull it into their meeting, right? They pull it into their gathering or channel that they're putting together, just like in Slack, you put it somewhere as a side note there. It's very dynamic, and reusable, right? So these are becoming sort of living documents. They're not static, they're not inaccessible, right? Stored on some repository server. No, they're there in the flow, right? They're right there where you work, right? So if you have a meeting, someone attached the recent 3 notes that we should talk about in the meeting, you just attach it, link it to that object, and then you have it all in one place. That's the idea really with the platform and using these individual pieces, bits and pieces in the flow.
Yeah. Yes, and the question is, yeah, that's clearly the need, and the question is how to do it, and I'm obviously thinking, I've just spent 6 to 8 weeks working on how to structure and index like all this lot of information, and how to write with other people on that and collaborate on it. So I'm just wondering because there's this architecture, if you like, in kind of federated wiki, my head universe stuff, and there's the architecture that DigiLife Collective are working on. I'm trying to figure out how to marry it, and I guess I'm particularly interested in how we share information, and the chat metaphor doesn't enable me to do that. It's just good quick start. So I'm just wondering where it will go, and what you described is exactly what I'm working on and what's needed, but I'm not quite sure how you're imagining getting there. I assume you imagine adding search to like Codio chat documents and coming up with a database of those, and I don't quite know what the detailed thinking around that is, because we've got this architecture of being able to fork it and repurpose it in your own context, and we've got the architecture of being able to extend it with plugins, which you can do with the Kodi stuff, which I really like. And there's I've got drag and drop. I did drag and drop between the Kodi stuff and the federated wiki, so that you can type up in real time in the chat, and then you archive it in the wiki, and then you break it up into various bits and you can fork it, but I dropped that, like I said, because the API didn't exist, so it was too hacky. So, and that doing the same thing in a different way. But I just want to get a picture of how the collaborative knowledge architecture would work in detail,
Sure.
For version managing.
I think we haven't determined that yet, and I'm going to have to go. But I would like to integrate FedWiki. I think that would be awesome. I think that we are making good use of hashtags and the search in Mattermost would help. And we also have Taiga, which has a wiki and lots of features that could be applied to this kind of application. And we used it for that in our chain for a while. I got to go, folks. We'll see you.
Okay. See you, Jim.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks, Jim. Yeah, this is a